Well, what age did I mean, I'm Irish. We're all good at fighting. that's that. We're all good. But I don't know. I was always,
He had it all: fame, fortune, and the relentless fire of a champion who could bend the world to his will. Conor McGregor, the brash Irishman, was a phenomenon. A man who turned dreams into reality with a left hand and a microphone. But somewhere along the way, the empire he built began to crumble under the weight of scandals, lawsuits, and a catastrophic injury that left the combat sports world in stunned silence. This is the story of McGregor's meteoric rise and heartbreaking unraveling, a tale of glory and tragedy that might forever change how you see one of UFC's most iconic figures. The darkest chapters are still to come, and they reveal a man fighting not just opponents, but himself. Stay with us, because this journey is as raw and real as it gets. Long before the sold-out arenas and global headlines, Conor McGregor was a plumber's apprentice in Crumlin, a rough, working-class corner of Dublin. The razor-sharp bravado that would define him wasn't a gimmick. It was forged in struggle. Days were spent hauling pipes, while nights were dedicated to shadowboxing dreams that seemed impossible for a kid from his neighborhood. McGregor went hungry to scrape together gym fees, borrowing money from his mother to chase his obsession. "I knew I was destined for greatness," he once said, his eyes blazing with unshakable conviction. "I just had to make the world believe it." And believe they did. His early fights in Cage Warriors were a revelation. McGregor's knockouts were vicious, his striking precise, and his self-belief infectious. He didn't just win, he dominated, talking his way into opponents' heads before dismantling them in the cage. By the time Dana White scouted him, McGregor was already a star in the making. His 2013 UFC debut was electric. In just 67 seconds, he obliterated Marcus Brimage, snatched the mic, and roared, "Dana!" 60 G's, baby. The Irishman had arrived, and he demanded the world's attention. Fans were captivated by this fighter who blended Muhammad Ali's charisma with a predator's ruthlessness. Every punch landed with a quip, every win with a moment that burned itself into the sport's history. But beneath the swagger, the seeds of isolation were being sown. The UFC saw McGregor wasn't just a fighter, he was a marketing juggernaut. Draped in the Irish tricolour, with a strut that screamed defiance, he turned fights into cultural events. His victories stacked up like trophies. Diego Brandão, Dustin Poirier, Dennis Siver, all fell to his terrifying precision. Behind the scenes, though, a dangerous shift was brewing. The louder the crowds cheered, the harder it became for McGregor to separate the man from the myth he'd created. The persona was taking over, and it was feeding a monster within. By 2015, McGregor had transcended MMA. He wasn't just the UFC's biggest star, he was redefining what a fighter could be in the social media era. He taunted champions, mocked contenders, and predicted knockouts with a confidence that bordered on prophecy. And then he delivered. At UFC 194, he faced Jose Aldo, the featherweight king who hadn't lost in a decade. In 13 seconds, McGregor landed a single, perfect left hand, knocking Aldo out cold and claiming the title. That moment didn't just make headlines, it reshaped the sport. McGregor was no longer a fighter. He was a global icon, a man who could predict the future and make it real, all while wearing tailored suits and a Rolex. Fans worshipped him, critics loathed him, but everyone watched. The chaos grew with his success. He jumped weight classes to face Eddie Alvarez and, in a flawless performance at UFC 205, dismantled him to become the first fighter to hold UFC titles in 2 divisions simultaneously. Standing in Madison Square Garden, dual belts gleaming, he shouted, "I'd like to apologize to absolutely nobody." It was the pinnacle of his career, but also the point of no return. McGregor began to see himself as untouchable, a god among men. But the cracks were already there. Missed press conferences, late arrivals, and a growing disconnect from the discipline that made him. The chaos spilled outside the cage. In 2018, McGregor's infamous attack at Barclays Center, where he hurled a dolly through a bus window, injuring fighters and staff, was a glaring red flag. It wasn't just a publicity stunt, it was a sign he was losing control. His empire was expanding. Proper number, 12 whiskey, fashion lines, endorsements. But his foundation was eroding. The persona that once elevated him was now a cage of its own, and McGregor was trapped inside, fighting to maintain an illusion of invincibility. The turning point came on March 5, 2016, at UFC 196. Nate Diaz, a gritty veteran who thrived on defying hype, stepped in on short notice to face McGregor in a heavier weight class. McGregor's usual mind games fell flat. Diaz didn't care about the fame or the trash talk. When Diaz choked him out in the second round, his words, "I'm not surprised, motherfuckers," cut deeper than any loss. McGregor's aura of invincibility was shattered. Fans saw a new side, vulnerable, human, scrambling for answers. Though he avenged the loss in a gritty rematch, something had shifted. The myth was cracking. After Diaz, McGregor's focus waned. He chased spectacle over substance, stepping into a boxing ring against Floyd Mayweather in 2017. The fight was a circus, a global event that earned him over $100 million. But it also marked a shift. McGregor didn't need the UFC anymore, not financially. The hunger that once drove him was fading, replaced by yachts, private jets, and late-night parties. He showed up late to weigh-ins, got into bar fights, and trained sporadically. Whispers from gyms suggested the fire was gone, replaced by a man coasting on fame. Then came the scandals, each darker than the last. In 2019, footage surfaced of McGregor punching an elderly man in a Dublin pub after the man refused to try his whiskey. The video went viral, disgusting even his staunchest supporters. Dana White, once his biggest defender, admitted, "It's not good. It's getting harder to stand by him." Worse followed. Reports emerged of a sexual assault investigation in Ireland, covered by major outlets like the New York Times. No charges were filed, but the allegations lingered like a shadow. In 2021, a woman and her mother filed a lawsuit, claiming McGregor raped her in a Dublin hotel in 2018. His legal team denied it, but the mounting controversies painted a grim picture. Sponsors pulled back, fans drifted away, and McGregor's once charismatic persona began to feel like a hollow act. At UFC 264 in July 2021, McGregor faced Dustin Poirier in their trilogy fight, desperate to prove he was still the king. The build-up was vintage McGregor, vicious insults, relentless hype. But the outcome was catastrophic. In the final seconds of the first round, his left leg snapped under him, a grotesque ankle break that left him screaming on the canvas. The arena fell silent. The man who'd built an empire on being untouchable was now helpless, his leg shattered. It wasn't just a physical injury, it was a symbol of his fall. Critics had long whispered that the lavish lifestyle, yachts, clubs, whiskey, had dulled his edge. That moment on the canvas seemed to confirm it. Surgery followed, with titanium rods and screws rebuilding his leg. McGregor vowed a comeback, but the road was brutal. Rehab was slow, and the mental toll was heavier. On social media, he posted shirtless photos, flashy suits, and vacation shots, but fans saw through the facade.